views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening, welcome to Bronx Talk. This is our 20th anniversary program. After 20 years, we've done more than 950 shows, and so tonight we are coming to you from the Andrew Friedman home on the Grand Concourse, and we are going to do just a number of things that I think will help you appreciate what we've done over the years, but more importantly, what you in the Bronx have done and what we have all lived through in the borough of the Bronx. We're going to be taking a look at archival footage, and we should also mention that we are sitting in the library of the Andrew Friedman home, and just down the hall, just about 25 feet away, there's a studio audience, which we've never had before for the show, and maybe if those people want to applaud and say, and establish that they're here, then there they go. And then you know that we've got really the people of the Bronx in the house. And after we do our segments here, I'm going to go out and we're going to talk to those people and talk one-on-one about the borough of the Bronx, about Bronx Talk, and as usual, anything else that's on their mind. But to get started, we're going to bring in the executive director of BronxNet Television, my good friend and colleague, Michael Maxnabi. Nice to have you with us. Congratulations, 20 years.
Augury, Gary, and neighbor.
And neighbor, that's true. We live in the same
love
neighborhood.
This place that we call the Bronx, and it's a place close to our home and heart because you know what? It's about transformation. And
over the 20 years, we've seen a lot of transformation. So, explain to me from your perspective why Bronx Talk was a good fit for BronxNet Television and all the great things that BronxNet does. Why does this program fit in there?
So the Bronx is a symbol of urban renewal. It was once a symbol of urban blight, but it is a symbol of urban renewal. And for the last 2 decades, BronxNet has provided a venue, a nexus of sorts for the community, for organizations, for leaders to come together and discuss what's happening on television, on the BronxNet channels, also to learn media production, to produce programs. It's about independent voices participating in civic dialogue. And Bronx Talk is truly a manifestation of that. Because, you know what? The story has been told so wrong by so many.
Not by us.
Not by us. And so the idea of the Bronx having its, the people of the Bronx having their own channels, it's truly important. And that was a need. If there ever was a need for a community to have their own channels, it was here in the Bronx. And we showed over the course of 20 years that this is important, that this is really a part of community building. So what happens in the studios, and by the way, this studio audience here looks terrific at the beautiful and historic Andrew Friedman home on the Grand Concourse. It is not the first time you've had a studio audience, as I recall.
We shot. I'm corrected.
From the debates where you do have.
That's true. There are people, but certainly not like this.
Not like this.
But for me, why Bronx Talk is a good fit for BronxNet Television is because of what you said. The rest of the world doesn't know who we are. They absolutely ignore who we are. And all the people that we're going to bring on tonight, we give them a chance to establish all the different things that are going on in the Bronx.
BronxNet's providing opportunities for Bronxites and also opportunities for the Bronx to identify and to define itself as a community. So we have visitors from all over the world coming to the Bronx. Visitors from Europe said to me, hey, I remember we gave them a tour, we showed them the studios. We have an expression, c'est le Bronx. It means it's messed up. They didn't use the term messed up. They used a different term, but they said, and you know what? We see what the Bronx is really like. You've shown us, and we love the Bronx. This is an
That's why we're
impressive
here.
community. And that's why Gary Axelbank, with shows like Bronx Talk on BronxNet, and really programs produced by amazing producers that reflect the diversity of the Bronx, we say, yes, say Le Bronx. We are proud of who we are.
There you go. And frankly, nobody prouder than Michael Max Nobby. However, there is the first citizen of the Bronx is the borough president, and he could not be here tonight, and he sent his regrets. However, he, as you well know, he invited me and the BronxNet cameras to come into his office just about a week ago, and so I took a moment to sit down with Borough President Ruben Diaz, who offered his good wishes to me, to the program, and to the people of the Bronx. Let's take a look. Mr. Borough President, thank you so much for doing this. And before we even talk about old memories or anything, thank you so much for being such a great guest. You never qualify what I'm allowed to ask. You sit down, and 22 times more than anybody else, you've been the most frequent guest on Bronx Talk. So I really appreciate that.
Well, you're saying thank you and you appreciate it. I think that this is more about myself and Bronxites saying thank you to you and showing our appreciation for 20 years of either political conversation and debate, or even having the information that unfortunately we don't get to hear or see on television too much these days. And over the last 20 years, you've been consistent with it. You have given it your all with a certain class and fearlessness and a particular wealth of knowledge that you don't get to see or hear from many journalists. And so for that, I'm here to say congratulations and thank you.
Well, thank you so much for thinking that way. You know, we never really stopped to count. We never stopped to look back. So this really was an opportunity to do that. And so I look back at the 22 segments that you were on. I didn't look at them all, but I think my favorite one was when we had you and your father together. That to me was an extraordinary pairing. Do you have a favorite segment, a favorite moment, or a worst moment that you think of?
I still remember the first time I went on your show, which was the day before the special election in 1996. And I remember how nervous I was. I remember going to your show with my dad in the car, and he's sort of explaining for the viewers, for the people who don't understand. I was, 22 years of age at the time. It was, I was running for the New York State Assembly. There was a snowstorm. There was snow everywhere. It was really cold. And here I am doing my first television interview. And I remember being really nervous. And what I do recall from that is how you would ask certain questions, and there were times where I felt you made it more about my father than me, and my father took exception to that. But I felt really good after the interview, and I always remember wanting more.
Well, you got a lot more over the years, but maybe it's because you didn't have a track record at that time. So the only information I had to go on was with your father. But I remember, even at that time that you were still in college, you were still going to Lehman College, and we talked politics, even off camera. And the one thing I would conclude with is that we know that there are questions that I ask that are difficult questions, but where you and I are on the same page is that we both believe in the borough of the Bronx. And when we were at the YMCA dinner the other night, and we both saw that young man who was, 11 or 12 years old, put us both to shame, I think we were both inspired by that. And on that level, I think that's where we're on the same page.
That's why when I go to your show, and I don't understand why people are hesitant to go. That's a little jab there, I guess. I don't know. But when I go, like you said, we don't have a conversation about what you're going to ask. I don't take exception to it because I know at the heart of it is a journalist who is doing your job, but at the same time you're asking questions from the vantage point of a lifelong Bronxite, someone who really cares about the borough. And that means that tough questions need to be asked. And we are in the job as elected officials and community leaders to be able to answer or state our position on whatever questions that you ask. And you know, there are times that you've been really tough on us, for instance, on filtration. You've been tough on us on making sure that whenever we have some type of public investment or public dollars going to a project, you know, what type of return are we getting on that investment? And I think that that's all valid, and we really appreciate. I think Bronxites really appreciate. And the one thing that I love the most is when you have your political debates.
Well, you would tell me about them afterwards. You say, I can't believe you asked so-and-so. Yeah. But listen, the bottom line for all of this, and we're going to have to wrap it up, but the bottom line for all of this is that what you said, and that is we both want Bronxites to be informed. I think it's important that they know what you're thinking and what you're working on so that we can have the right kind of debate and get to the right answers for the people of the Bronx.
Look, again, I want to congratulate you. You've done over 50 debates in your 20 years. You have had every single elected official from our borough and beyond come on your program. You have had professionals from myriad different issues inform Bronxites. And the way that you do it, your style is something that I think Bronxites really need to appreciate, and it's not what we often get with public access television. Certainly throughout the city of New York, I think you exemplify good quality journalism, a quality interviewer, and here in the Bronx, and BronxNet is lucky to have you, and I hope that you will be around for another 20 years at least.
And so when is he coming on next? We'll have to make that appointment. But he's been great, and we know there will be a next time, and we appreciate it. Ruben Diaz, thank you so much.
Felicidades. So again, one of the things I get to do as the borough president is proclaim days. And what I wanted to do today is proclaim, I'm not going to read the whole proclamation, but I wanted to proclaim on behalf of 1.4 million Bronxites on October 22nd, today, October 22nd, 2014, Bronx Talk Day. And again, I want to congratulate you, your producers, all the good people at BronxNet for giving us a good quality talk show in Bronx Talk. And we wish you many, many more.
Mr. Borough President, I am truly honored. Thank you so much. Great. And thank you to Borough President Ruben Diaz. As he established, he was our most frequent guest. He's been on the show 22 times. We haven't booked his next appearance, but we will do that soon. Anyway, we're ready to talk about education. The reason we're doing education first is because the very first program we did in October 1994 was about education. So I thought we'd start off this part of the program with education. I'm joined by Dr. Norman Wexler. So nice to have you with us.
A pleasure.
Dr. Wexler was the principal of my alma mater, DeWitt Clinton High School, also superintendent of Bronx High Schools, and been in education many, many years. Also, we're joined by Professor Michelle Rodney from Monroe College. Nice to have you with us, Dean Rodney. Let's start with you, Dr. Wexler. So you were on the show 5 times. The first was in 1997. We talked about the DeWitt Clinton Centennial. Before I ask you about any education issues, any remembrances of the show? Did I ask you some dumb questions, or how did we do?
No, it was very, very exciting because we were able to highlight lots of positive changes that were going on at Clinton at the time, and incredibly exciting to celebrate the 100th anniversary. And I don't have to tell you the tens of thousands of Clinton alums who are out there who are made their mark in every walk of life.
So I have 80 years to go. Is that what you're saying?
You have 80 years, and you're, of course, one of the very most accomplished of those.
Well, I don't know. Considering DeWitt Clinton, that may not be the case. Talk to me about the best development in education over the years, in the last 2 decades. Yeah. Well, we've covered them all, but tell me about the best development.
I think that because of the great need in the Bronx that you've often talked about and highlighted, Gates, Carnegie, and Soros decided that they were going to put the bulk of their dollars into transforming schools in the Bronx, and especially to focus on low-performing high schools. and it was an opportunity to take some of the high schools that were performing very, very poorly and to transform them into new small schools.
And actually, you were on a program, as I recall, and we talked about small schools.
That's right. We try to bring in all constituents, the unions and the parents and the students and administrators and people in the Bronx to talk about what the needs were.
Before we bring Dean Rodney into the conversation, worst development or biggest concern for you right now in Bronx schools?
I'm very prejudiced, as you understand, having been part of turning DeWitt Clinton High School around in the mid-'90s. It causes me great sadness that the tremendous expansion of new small schools in New York City has resulted in the destruction of many of our large high schools here in the Bronx. Kennedy, Lehman, and Clinton is certainly having its issues.
And is there something to salvage still? I'm assuming you believe there is in some of the large high schools.
Yeah, I think that if we talk about giving students and parents a choice, that choice has to include the opportunity to attend small schools, but also large multi-purpose schools like Clinton.
Dean Rodney, Monroe College has a long legacy in career education. My sense from talking to people and also my affiliation with the college is that that is the trend nowadays. Talk to me about the importance of what they used to call vocational training, but it really is career training and giving people an opportunity when it comes to colleges.
So the mission of Monroe College is, in fact, that it is career-centered. So the students are going to declare a major at the outset of their academic journey, and it's going to be either in criminal justice, business and accounting, IT, culinary, hospitality, and then we have the practitioners in the classroom that have the academic credentials as well as the experience in the field, so that when you put those two together, we're preparing our students for the career.
This is a trend larger than just Monroe College?
Absolutely.
Is that your sense?
Absolutely. You see it across the country because the students need to understand the practicalness. It's not just a theory-based understanding, and it's a real-world experience, and that's what we've done at Monroe College.
And I'll tell you that what I hear all the time is the idea of jobs. Anyway, you were on the show twice.
Yes.
You were on for the 9th anniversary of Amadou Diallo's shooting.
Okay.
And then we talked about, I believe, the Trayvon Martin case.
case.
So you're not in the education segment, but you're going to be in the segment where we talk about issues. All right, we're ready for education. Our first show of Bronx Talk in October 1994 was about education. Since then, we've done 97 programs on education. Let's take a look. Good evening. Welcome to Bronx Talk. I'm Gary Axelbank, and this is our first edition of this program. It's going to give you, people in the Bronx, a chance to talk to people who are making news in the Bronx. Tonight, our first guest is Sandra Learner, who's the Bronx representative on the Board of Education. If you'd like to talk with us, specifically to Ms. Learner, then what you do is you call us at the phone number that will be flashed across the screen as the evening goes on.
Good evening.
Welcome to the show. Having been in District 10, it occurred to me that you're probably the only person that could have gotten a job with the Board of Ed and had less political infighting in the Board of Ed than you had in your previous position. Is it possible to get through all of these problems, through the politics, through the alleged corruption or actual corruption, and solve some of the educational problems in the Bronx or in the city?
We have to. Gary, if we don't do that, the city itself will be in a worse crisis than it is now.
Carmelo Saez is only the poster boy being made here because these people have legislation up in Albany that they're trying to re-centralize community, the educational system.
There is no doubt that this is a school system that doesn't, I mean, as I said, some of the conditions that children have to learn in and go to school in are outrageous. And I think what it says on a daily basis to some of those students is, you know, when you tell them, we care about you, we want you to do well, and then we send them to go to school in places that are overcrowded or deteriorated or dilapidated.
When I originally went to PS7, there was no PS24. When they built PS24, the kids from around PS24 went there and didn't go to PS7 anymore. So if we build middle school 368, The kids who live right around Middle School 368 will go there.
Ultimately, if a teacher isn't doing what she should be doing, if somebody's not doing the best that she or he can do for kids, then a supervisor should be there observing that teacher and saying that and calling that out loud.
With large schools such as Clinton and Kennedy, I think one of the imperatives is to break those schools down into manageable units.
There is a feeling, and it comes from somewhere, that has devalued, even image-wise, a CUNY diploma.
Well, who's to say a CUNY diploma is devalued? For example, CUNY sends more students, minority students, to get PhDs than Columbia and all the Ivies combined. So that shows that the diploma is certainly worth a whole lot.
A student who wants to do well, a student who really cares about getting a good education is not going to get lost within Monroe College. And we pride ourselves to do everything we can to make a student successful. And you don't have that at many institutions today. You do have it at a lot of institutions, but we really pride ourselves on this, and it works.
If the mayor wants to have that kind of control, the control he has is hiring or firing the chancellor. But that's it. Let the man get up there and talk to us. Let the man tell us what he wants. Let the man give us his vision.
He says a third of the teachers in the school are on medication for depression or anxiety. He says they're teachers who can't get out of the car in the morning to go to the school because they're teaching in fear. And then they transmit the fear to the students, because if you don't do better in these tests, the school gets closed, I lose my job, or I become, APP, go to the rubber room.
I believe that UPK is going to be something that we consider along the lines of Social Security for the United States. You're going to have children now that are going to be reading by the time they are 4 years old. And when you look at the empirical data in this country, kids that read at that point go on to graduate at a much higher rate, go on to get college degrees, and so then nothing but positive things are going to come from it.
So this is just a small sample of the many shows we did on education. And one of the people that you saw in there, in fact, the last one, is sitting right here, Assemblyman Louis Sepulveda. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you for inviting me.
And you're joined by Councilmember Vanessa Gibson. Thank you for joining us. This segment, we're going to talk about all the debates. In many ways, people believe that the debates are what characterize Bronx Talk. And Assemblyman Sepulveda, before we talk about the experience you had on a debate, although then I think you came in afterwards, but you were on the show 10 times. Do you remember the first time you were on the show?
1997.
Because you looked it up.
That's correct.
You looked it up. See, we published the list.
You did.
And you were on as a CCRB candidate. I didn't recall that.
Wow.
Did you end up getting on the CCRB?
No, what happened was I was approved by the city council, and Mayor Giuliani felt that I was too closely associated with Freddie Ferrer at the time.
So there it is.
Right.
All right.
So
So we're going to show a clip from a debate, but
Yes.
we talked about it off camera. You learned from that, right?
Oh,
Being
absolutely,
on
yeah.
Bronx Talk was instructive for you as a public official.
Well,
Talk
certainly
about
with the debates, I mean, that debate is what I call one of the lowest points of my political career.
I'm so honored.
But you learn from it, and luckily I had a shot of redemption a couple of years ago, and it worked out.
It worked out well because you got reelected.
Yes.
But you have been an enthusiastic guest, and if I believe the last time you were here, you echoed what the borough president had said on his segment, that it's important for elected officials to do battle with me, or at least have the conversation.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you have legitimate issues and legitimate questions, I've never had a bad experience being on the show.
Other than that one moment.
You ask tough questions, and then after the show, then we have a discussion about it if I didn't like it. But generally speaking, you're fair.
Well, that's really the bottom line. And I do want to thank you, because you've been just about every time I've called, you said, you know what, sure, I'll be happy to talk about whatever the issue is. So we appreciate that.
Thank you.
And Ms. Gibson, now let's see, you were only on twice, or 4 times, excuse me. And that was, I guess, for a debate that you were on. It was the first time that you were on. What was that experience like, being in a debate? And because you were an assembly person looking to run for city council.
Right. It was very interesting. Being in the assembly for 4 years and then Becoming a candidate last year running for the city council was really just an opportunity for me to serve my constituents on a local level, using a lot of the experience I gained in Albany, dealing with a lot of policy matters before New York State, and really now applying it to the city council. So it was a very interesting and spirited debate.
Well, you know, I'm going to give you a little inside baseball, because I usually, you know, I'm take a very objective stand during the debates. But I felt very sympathetic for you because, and we're going to show this clip of somebody asking you a question that frankly didn't make sense. I mean, basically, he wasn't aware of what the process was, and then he was accusing you of not supporting women's rights, which would seem to be a conflict.
Right.
Did you walk away saying, what was he talking about?
So a lot of times I'm really not surprised at times, and what I always say to anyone running for elective office, whether it's city, state, or federal, is to really learn and understand the process. And so in this particular debate, in that segment, the question was about the Women's Equality Act before Albany that was pushed by Governor Cuomo. And I was one of the supporters, working with my colleagues in the caucus
and
to
he
support
basically
it.
accused you of not supporting it.
Yes, exactly.
You know, you can't control everything, I suppose. Anyway, we thank you for the times you were on, you two assemblymen.
Sure, thank you.
And we'll just tell you before we roll the tape, let's see, we did 50 debates. In this segment, you will notice that the first debate that you're going to see is with the same candidate who was in the last debate that we did. So we've literally spanned the career of one very well-known Bronx politician. Another highlight of this segment, you'll see what we have called the famous Hatchet moment with Pedro Espada Jr. And so that's in there. A lot of people talked about it, but maybe never saw it. And you'll also see our current borough president when he was just a youngster. So let's take a look.
My number one priority, if elected to the State Assembly, of course, would be crime. But you know something? I feel at this point in time we're really not allocating and spending our crime dollars properly. One thing that I always hear about, we had it years ago, I know Mayor Giuliani mentioned it, but we haven't implemented yet, is to go back to the system of the old cop on the beat.
Every time I lead with a positive, you live up to your, well, it's just okay. It's just a matter of, he walked up here, everything's fine. You showed your plaque. I would like to give you this little, it's plastic, viewers, don't get nervous. This is the Hatchet Man Award. And this is one that you should pridefully hang up on your wall, because the fact of the matter is, every time I lead with a positive development, you lead with a negative. It's an appropriate counter because it is all you know.
There should have been an initiative and a vote for more schools and monies and a real push for a Marshall Plan. Congressman Engel's vote went to build more prisons.
You know what? We'll let everybody go around on the same question. Congressman, do you have a response to that statement by...
Well, while Mr. Seabrook has been absent for a good number of his votes and missed a lot of votes and doesn't show up for work and asks for a promotion, I've been fighting the fight for education and for the important things.
Why have you accepted both the Democratic and Republican lines in this up-and-coming election?
I've always been a Democrat, and I will always be a Democrat. I was the Democratic district leader. In fact, in 1994, I ran the field operation in the 75th Assembly District for the statewide Democratic ticket of Carl McCall, Karen Bernstein, and Mario Cuomo, which you were invisible. You disappeared. And your father.
Can you honestly say that if elected, you will stand up to your father and your brother in opposing them, and if necessary, actively fight against them on issues like these, which directly affect the 80th Assembly District?
Absolutely. I honor my father's 35 years of public service. However, I value my independence, and I've been taught to think independently.
I spent 40 days in jail because a judge in Puerto Rico decided that the sentence that they needed, that he felt was just, was 40 days in jail. I stood up for an issue that I feel is very important personally as a Puerto Rican.
I would not go to jail for it. I certainly wouldn't go to jail during the budget season.
Do the job that you're elected to do, and then advocate if you must. Protest if you must, but do it within the confines of the law.
Is that what the future of this city is using stimulus money to create construction jobs?
Well, the president's economic stimulus package specifically speaks to building our economies, building our communities for the long term.
And I'm ready for that kind of dirt
dirt,
It's not dirt,
dirt
Mr. Rivera,
campaign.
that's the reality.
The dirt,
I asked
dirt,
people
dirt
to go
campaign.
to your
You said I had the last
campaign
word. He's not
Go
willing to
to your
abide by the rules
website.
here. That's the kind
Go
of
to
person
your
that I'm running
website,
against.
Mr. Rivera.
Person who doesn't understand
Mr.
what the
Rivera,
rules
go
are
to your
and is
campaign
willing to ignore the
financial
rules no matter what
website.
the rules are.
Mr. Rivera,
Right.
you like to use monies that don't belong to you for your personal lifestyle, and shame on you. When you have people in our community that
What did I
can't pay
say?
their
What did I
rent.
say? That he was going to
They
break the
can't pay
rules,
their rent.
that he was not going to abide by the
Mr.
rules,
Rivera,
and that he
let's be
wants the
real.
last
Let's
word.
take our gloves
which is
off and have a
pure
discussion.
nonsense.
You
Pure nonsense.
cannot
Pure
do that,
nonsense.
Mr.
Pure
Rivera.
nonsense.
You should not be
and the
using
people that are
tax-free
watching
money.
this are going to listen to this and say, bah.
Mr. Rivera,
Mr. Sepulveda,
your monies, the campaign monies that
I'm
you've
trying
used are given to you by the
Can
lobbyists.
you take control of this?
The lobbyists.
Gary, can you take control of this?
In my case is a clear example of why candidates should not handle petitions, because at the end of the day, if there is a charge of fraud, the candidate could potentially be found guilty of that.
At 6 p.m. on the evening before the scheduled recording of tonight's debate, I received a phone call from the Charles Rangel campaign saying that the incumbent congressman has a schedule conflict and would not participate. Quite unfortunately, Mr. Cabrera declined our invitation to participate in tonight's program and offered no explanation as to why. So like we have done for Charles Rangel, Fernando Cabrera this year, and Hector Ramirez and Pedro Espada Jr. and others in the past, Assemblyman Jose Rivera will be represented tonight by an empty chair.
Why wasn't she advocating to make sure that that bill was brought back this year in the summertime?
I have been advocating for the bill. I continue to be an advocate. My colleagues and I in the Assembly majority, we are working with the governor. We're working with 49 women's advocacy groups like Planned Parenthood, like National Organization for Women. We are fighting to make sure the challenge is that the state Senate does not want to return and pass the bill in its entirety.
I heard Senator Klein say on TV the other day that we've got to elect more Democrats. What he did allows the Republicans to continue to be in power.
Well, just to pivot back, Mayor Bloomberg did give myself and the IDC Political Action Committee a contribution, and it was based on the great work we did. I continue to deliver for the city of New York.
So there you go, some of the most interesting moments, most memorable moments we've ever had in our 20 years of Bronx Talk. Right now we're joined by Assemblyman Jeffrey Dinowitz. Thank you for joining us.
Great to be
and my
here.
longtime friend and colleague, a Bronx journalist, or maybe former Bronx journalist, I don't know.
We'll see.
Bob Capstatter, nice to have you with us,
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you, pal.
And of course, Cappy wrote for many years about Bronx politics. Assemblyman, before I even ask you questions, you have something for me, and I'm going to let you do that.
I do indeed. This is a proclamation from the New York State Assembly celebrating your 20 years as host of Bronx Talk. And I'm not going to read the whereases, but needless to say that you have made an incredible contribution to the Bronx because of this show. And most people don't know it, but we've probably known each other longer than almost anybody
But
else.
all those
who
other
is here.
people, we can say it, the Assemblyman and I, he wasn't an Assemblyman then, we were in junior high school together at John Peter Tatar.
Yes, indeed. So this is for you.
Thank
and
you so much.
Congratulations, and we thank you, the people of the Bronx. Thank
Now
you.
it's time for me to ask the tough questions. I wonder how many members of the Assembly have been on the show. We'd have to do a count. But now you have been on the show, you ready? Drum roll, please. 17 times. And,
wow.
Not only about politics or those kinds of issues, but we've talked other issues, and you've been on. Do you remember when your first show was? October 17th, 1995.
That's a lot of years ago.
That's a lot of years ago. Any memories of being on the show? Something you want to share?
I can remember a whole bunch of things. I remember debating one year with my good friend, but then Assemblyman Ruben Diaz Jr. I've been on candidate debates. We've had discussions on the water filtration plant, on a whole host of issues, on Albany stuff.
Budgets, I think we did.
Always interesting.
And actually, that clip of you with Ruben Diaz is one we're going to show in the next segment. So good choice to bring that up. Bob Capstatter, you were on the show, you know how many times?
Give me a number.
10 times. You were on 10 times.
Amateur.
And yeah, there you go. Although your first one was the same year. Do you remember the first one we did?
With a former local district manager from the West Bronx named Adolfo Carrion.
He remembers. It was on May 9th, 1995, and the show was about police corruption. You've been a police reporter and all those kinds of things. You are the only non-politician in this segment. Do you have?
Does that give me angel wings?
I don't know what it gives you, but do you have any way of characterizing your many years of writing about Bronx politics?
Oh, Lord.
I asked the toughest question of my own colleague. There you go.
Well, you know what? I've said this before. There have been, and there are some very hardworking, decent politicians, and there have been some characters. I went to the U.S. Bureau of Prisons website today just to look up a couple of them. A couple of them still have a couple of years to go before they see sunshine.
Before I can welcome them back to the show.
And they were all good copy.
But actually, we're going to show a number of them in the segment. What's next for Bob Capstatter? Have we seen the last of him?
Let's just say I'm looking for the next adventure to get laid off of.
There you go. The real question is, and maybe the Assemblyman wants to give me a yes or no answer, do we miss Bob Capstatter's column more, or does he miss writing it more? What do you think?
Oh, I can answer his. I can answer for him.
I always enjoyed reading his column. No, let me rephrase.
What a politician.
I usually enjoyed reading his column.
There you go. Do you miss it?
A bit. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of fun.
It's a lot. Life is a lot of work. Assemblyman Dinowitz, thank you for the proclamation. Bob Capstatter, thank you for the years
Gary,
of
my friend.
friendship and service.
A long-time friend.
And here we go. Now we're going to show a segment on politics. And the first segment is with Rudy Giuliani. It's the kind of back and forth, the likes of which I don't ever recall anybody challenging that mayor in this way. So I didn't back off, and you'll get to see that. One of my favorite political segments was we had the borough president and his father were on the show together, and that was a lot of fun to do. We had all three county leaders who have been county leaders, Democratic Party leaders through the 20 years, all three borough presidents, and just like with the other segment, the same guest that opens this one is the same guest that closes the segment, just as he was ready to hang up his political stripes. So let's take a look.
I'm not bored with my job, and I'm not looking for upward mobility. I happen to think being borough president of this borough is a terrific job. If I decide to run for mayor, it will be because I feel that something has to be done to get the city back on track, and I can make a difference in making that happen.
At what point will the city be able to comply with the courts, comply with regulations, and move homeless families in?
The court order is unrealistic. It has been all through the Dinkins administration.
Although it is the law.
But it's unrealistic. The law can be
a
unrealistic.
criminal who commits a crime and says, well, that law is unrealistic.
Yeah, but these are not, that's a very unfair thing to say. These are not criminal laws. These are like the things that judges do who run prisons and say that we had a judge tell us that we had to spend $450 million to build a facility so that the food would be warmer on Rikers Island. That was the law, but it was wrong. And we went back to court and we got it changed. So every pronouncement of a judge, although you do the best that you can to follow it, every pronouncement of a judge is not the law in the sense that it's a criminal act if you can't comply with it.
Will New Yorkers relate to this kind of maverick approach to a mayoral candidate?
Might be. I mean, nobody has any ideas about what Mr. Bloomberg's point of view is, because he hasn't said anything other than that he wants to run for mayor, but he has not told anyone what his philosophy is, what his point of view is on education, on crime, or anything else.
It would be amazing how much you can bring people together if you just take the time to talk to people. I made a policy from the day that I got elected county leader that if anyone called my office within 24 hours, I would return the call and meet with them. I attempted to find out exactly what was it that was important to each one of the different elements.
What do people need to do, elected officials or others need to do to get your support?
The same thing that they have always done. That is, come and have a conversation with me. Tell me what it is you're looking for. And I might at a given moment ask you, well, why should I support you? I challenge anyone, even those who have differences with me, to state with me, where have they ever had a difference with me that I never listened?
I believe that the county leader last year really blew up the unity in the Bronx Democratic Party by trying to oust an incumbent congressman who was obviously very popular in his district, and he also opposed the nomination of another candidate for state senate who was the first person to step forward in years to run against Guy Villela.
See, one of my opponents keeps making this distinction. This is a Democratic district and we ought to have a Democrat.
And I really reject that idea that you lead people and you represent people by dividing them by names and calling each other who's a Republican, who's a Democrat.
Investigators from the Manhattan District Attorney with search warrants went to his law firm, took certain records. Valella, who was in Albany at the time, told his staff to cooperate fully. What the records involved, I do not know, and it's Valella's privilege not to say.
There is something wholly wrong about these people that want to control voting and the political process as though it's a franchise that they own.
A former Senator Espada is undoubtedly going to claim that this is a political hit. The investigation into his finances, which apparently has been done over a period of 2 years, was an extensive investigation purely designed to keep him out of office. And what's your response to that?
It's not so. I mean, I spent, I guess it's 23 years now building up a reputation in the legal community, and I would not give that up for an indictment for Pedro Espada.
One investigation revealed that there were 9 people registered to vote from your apartment, and then your denial of that raised the interest of the Bronx DA on potential perjury charges because they said some of the 9 were people that you had to know. They were yours and your girlfriend's relatives. Explain to me what that situation
definitely. I mean, and this is something that happened last year because of my opposition at the time, you know, raised those issues. I actually brought it up to court. I mean, to the Board of Elections. We actually beat the case at the Board of Elections. They appealed the case. We actually also beat the appeal. And, you know, the last thing they did took it to the Bronx DA. I mean, it was something that I understand that the Bronx DA has an obligation to investigate if something is raised, you know, in that matter. But again, this is all allegations, you know, and it was never a fact, and it was never proven.
An elected official, an incumbent, is asking for considerable support from the county, and then it becomes embarrassing because you support somebody like Efrain Gonzalez or Pedro Espada, and then it's unveiled that they've done some of the worst things in elected.
But like I said, Gary, but there's been instances where people have been accused of things and it hasn't been true. So what I'm saying is, it's not elected officials' jobs to be the police and the investigators and the district attorney of other elected officials.
I am disappointed in the actions of Senator Klein. I do not believe that they make us stronger as Democrats. I believe that we need to deal with our issues inside the family, and that if that's the best way to deal with them as opposed to going off and doing something separate. Disappointed in his actions, and you know, I obviously think that we need to be stronger as Democrats, and we should do that together.
Are there things you disagree on? I mean, fathers and sons in general have things they don't agree on.
No,
and I can't believe political.
He has been in Albany for 7 years, and he knows the ins and outs of Albany. When I got to Albany, I got only 6 months. I got there in January. He was instrumental in letting me know where the hotel.
My primary focus will be job creation. We have a great opportunity to seriously look at the Kingsbridge Armory, which is an eyesore, which is in the city's hands. We also have the Harlem River waterfront, which presents a real opportunity for open space and for development and for jobs.
As I went around the borough, Gary, over the last couple of months and even the last year and a half testing the waters, I see that everyone, whether you're from Riverdale, from Throsneck, Wakefield, Soundview, Port Morris, people want a cleaner borough, people want a safer borough, people want a better opportunity and educational system for their children, and folks want a responsive government with integrity and partnerships, and that's what I want to do as I move forward.
How do you feel? Do you feel nostalgic? Do you feel sad? Do you wish you had more time? Do you, how do you personally feel?
First of all, I feel fine. I would love to have been elected the city's 108th mayor, but I've had the great gift of being the mayor of my hometown, being the borough president of the Bronx for nearly 15 years, and it has been a tremendous honor. Look, kid who grew up where I grew up with nothing, to be this borough's chief executive for as long as I had, to enjoy the confidence of its people trusting me with their neighborhoods. There is no greater gift.
And there we go. There's a look at many of the people who have been elected officials in the borough of the Bronx. Before we turn to our guests, and our next segment is going to be about issues in the Bronx, Some people know that my son is a news reporter in Tampa, Florida. I'm very proud of him. He could not be here tonight, so he sent a video. I have not seen the video, so for you and for me, it's the first time we're ever going to see Evan Axelbank from WTVT at Fox in Tampa, and he sent greetings. Let's take a look.
Well, hi there from Tampa. My name is Evan Axelbank, and I am Gary's proud son. I'm a news reporter here, and I'm sitting on the set here at Fox 13 WTVT here on Kennedy Boulevard in Tampa. It is safe to say that I would not be sitting where I'm sitting if it wasn't for the trail that my father blazed for me. I first became interested in this whole business because I watched him work. Along with my mother Suzanne and my sister Sean, I am one of only 3 people in this whole world who have seen him prepare for Bronx Talk up close. And let me tell you something, it is a sight to see. When he's in the zone, you don't go near him. His Monday night routine has stayed the same through all these years. He writes his questions carefully. He makes sure his introduction is perfect, and then he takes a nap. And my mother wakes him up at the exact same time every single Monday night. Then he showers and puts on his makeup and is ready to inform the Bronx in a way that nobody else does. He talked filtration back in 1994, gay marriage in 1996, school shootings in 1999, Afghanistan in 2001, Iraq in 2003, the N-word in 2006, the Kingsbridge Armory in 2009, and of course the living wage in 2011. And in 2014, he talked issues facing people in Norwood. It all runs the gamut, and he tells me all the time that knowledge is power, and that's why he's continued doing Bronx Talk for so long. He loves the people of the Bronx. I've seen him cry watching a Little League game filled with kids who he doesn't even know. I've seen him stop to talk to an artist on the street. I've watched him closely examine the doorway where Amadou Diallo was shot. So, on behalf of my fellow Bronxites, I say thank you, not just for what you do, but for how you do it. You've made me a better journalist, you've made me a better person, and you have simply made the Bronx better. Now, before I go, I have one more thing to do. If you are the Dean of Bronx Broadcasting, Gary, then this man right here is the Dean of Broadcasting here in Tampa. John Wilson has been an anchor here at WTVT for even longer than you've been doing Bronx Talk. He's actually also retiring this year, too, or my dad's not retiring, but this man is. And so before we go with this little message here, John Wilson here has something to say to you.
Gary, I love saying the name Axelbank on television. I've never had the opportunity to do that before, so thank you very much. And thank you for Evan. What a contribution he has been to us here in Tampa and to journalism and to television news in particular. To you, congratulations on so many years of success. I started to say suffering through so many years. But
he hasn't suffered.
But what people don't know is that we would do this for free, and they actually pay us to be on television. I'm sure you haven't been paid enough for all the joy you've given the folks of the Bronx. And congratulations again, and best wishes to you from all of us in Tampa and 3200 West Kennedy Boulevard.
See ya.
Bye.
Oh, my goodness. I can't believe he told all my secrets. Actually, not all my secrets. He probably has a couple more. Well, thank you, Evan, and thank you, John Wilson. And now I'm thrilled to present Father Richard Gorman, the chair of Community Board 12. Thank you for joining us.
Gary, thanks for inviting me. By the way, you better give that young man an increase in his allowance.
Yeah, I guess so. Or maybe the way he's going to give me an increase in my allowance. And also we're joined by the president and COO of the Kingsbridge National Ice Center. It's our first time to present John Neary to the public. So nice to have you with us, John.
Gary, thank you very much for joining us.
Father Gorman, let's start with you. You were on the show 11 times. Do you remember the first one?
I think it had something to do with an issue in Community Board 12.
Well, it was January 3rd, 1995, and we were talking about sex shops, that there were a number of houses of all sorts of repute opened in that.
How interesting to have a Catholic priest on to talk about sex.
Well, we won't tell them about that time we were doing a video story and we got pulled over because they thought we were soliciting, as you recall.
That's right. But if I had to get busted with anyone, Gary, it would
have been me.
I'd love to be you.
Anyway, any memories, any thoughts about your 11 times on the program?
Well, I think that certainly made an impression on me. I've never forgotten that. I always tell everyone the night that you and I nearly got busted outside a sex shop, I said that would have made a very good newspaper story. I'm sure that would have made Catholic New York right away. But I think some of the shows that we've done on the Croton plant have been very good. They've been informative, and they got heated sometimes. They were enjoyable to do, though.
Do you get the sense that not only the shows that you're on, that people in your community see and hear the issues that we talk about, and then there's some reactions? So a lot of times it's unwanted development or homeless shelters or things like that. Is there impact in your neighborhood?
Yeah, because as you know, we probably get one of the largest crowds for a community board meeting. We get between 75 and 100 every month. And you'll be surprised the number of people say, I saw you on the TV. Let me tell you, that's right, but did you know this?
There you
go.
go.
Obviously, they must be listening.
John Neary, you must be one of the happiest people in the Bronx right now. People may or may not know, but the city just signed the lease with the Kingsbridge National Ice Center. After various legal wranglings and deliberations, this is good news for the Bronx.
It's terrific. We're going to be building some ice, and I think in true Bronx fashion, we're building the world's largest ice sports arena right in the neighborhood here. We're thrilled about it.
You're here actually, you're not featured in the segment. Your colleague, who is the CEO, Mark Messier, is featured in the segment we're going to show. And he talks very passionately about the impact the Kingsbridge National Ice Center can, and I guess we'd like to think will have, on the Bronx. Talk to me about the commitment that you're making to the Bronx, as opposed to just certainly, yet another nice development.
Right. I've not heard Mark's segment, but ultimately at the core of the vision and the mission we're trying to accomplish is kids, jobs, community. And the idea is to come into the neighborhood with a shared value creation framework and create a win-win for everybody in the neighborhood.
The Bronx Zoo, the Botanical Garden, Yankee Stadium, and the Kingsbridge National Ice Center. Sounds good, doesn't it?
There's 56 million people a year coming through New York City. We want as many as possible coming this way.
What's next for you guys before we go to our segment? This is the bit of news. What are you working on next in the development of Koenig?
Well, this is the perfect setup right here. We're actually working with Father Gorman and other neighborhood participants at a high school level, grammar school level, and community level to see what their interests and needs are and make sure we intersect that into our design.
Father Richard Gorman, thank you so much for being on the show.
Like I said, you run a good show, man.
And for your first time, a Bronx Talk virgin as it was, John Neary, thank you so much. All right, so this segment is going to be about issues, all the different issues that we've covered. We recently published our list on the BronxNet website. You can go there and see all the 950 shows, or at least see a list of them. As my son mentioned, we did our first show on gay marriage in 1996. Our first show on Stop and Frisk was in 2000. And then we did Shop and Frisk just a couple of months ago, as a matter of fact. Crime and Policing, we did 48 times. Youth and Youth Services, 26 times. Water Filtration, 21 times. Housing and Homelessness, 20 times. Yankee Stadium, 15 times. The Kingsbridge Armory, 8 times. And I can tell you, selecting segments for this was very difficult because we did every issue you can think of. Let's take a look.
The Yankees are a private enterprise. New York City doesn't own the Yankees. It's a private enterprise. If you make a mistake about that and you start playing the political games that some people play, you could lose the Yankees from all of New York.
Gary, let's not use euphemisms. The mayor was talking about me, borough president.
All right.
Now, if by that he means that I'm not on my knees to George Steinbrenner, he's absolutely right. If by that he means that every time George Steinbrenner utters one of his most outrageous comments about the crime at Yankee Stadium and all the other nonsense, I don't tell the truth on behalf of the people who elected me and the city of which I am an officer, then he's absolutely right.
We've crafted a community partnership agreement that addresses all these issues, in addition to ensuring the creation of a central park, to ensuring that the stadium and the garages are all built to the highest environmental standards that exist anywhere in the country.
And that will be in writing?
That will be in writing. That will absolutely be in writing, and it will be a signed agreement.
It's the inconvenience that those games cause the local community, the immediate community, 10 blocks radius. There's about 100 games or 100 days per year that community is actually put a lot of changes concerning...
Such as, give me an example.
Parking.
This is a chance to bring $1.5 billion worth of economic development opportunities into the Bronx, and we would make a similar commitment in making sure that their job opportunities were linked there. So again, when you ask what this deal is, there isn't a deal. There are opportunities, and people need to discuss what are their opportunities and what are those challenges.
We chose this site at Marshalloo Golf Course, what involves the hauling of literally thousands and thousands of tons of dirt. And here's a company that's doing it, and now we have allegations of a connection to organized crime.
Housing court doesn't work. And we took a look at it, and the amount of time it takes. Now, sometimes there are tenants who abuse housing court because they know they're not going to pay. They stay as long as they can until the day before, and then walk out and not pay for the services that they got. Mm-hmm. But then there are landlords who try to squeeze people out by reducing services and tormenting people.
Not just in the Bronx, but citywide, we've recognized the need for more interaction with the people that we serve.
What is your evaluation of that incident when a young immigrant man was gunned down by police in a vestibule in the Soundview section of the Bronx?
Well, one runs out of adjectives and adverbs in discussing it. Outrageous, dastardly, and so it seems so inadequate. What an act. The thing that I suppose is as painful as anything else, in addition to the tragic, unnecessary loss of life of an innocent person, is the fact that you could almost see this coming.
How concerned should Bronxites be right now that there's more out there?
This is a new time, a new age for us, that we should be cautious as a nation, but I don't think we should pull back as individuals.
I think it's unfortunate that it takes these high-profile tragedies to really get the American public as a whole to come out, and this is, bipartisan. Just in general, the American people want to see this not happen again. And in that conversation, we definitely have to talk about what we're doing for mental health services and how we, look after those individuals. But at the same time, we have to look at where we are with guns in America.
Even under Commissioner Bratton, who introduced the broken window concept of policing, and under SAFER, you did not see this widespread abuse of stop and frisk.
He went from being the community police commissioner to now being the crime fighter strategy police commissioner. But in his first term, what we seemed to forget was the best source of communication, the information highway, was coming from the people themselves in the retail stores.
And so now, I don't think there's any, I'm making an assumption here that's not correct. Now there's no question that relationship certainly has fragmented.
Absolutely.
George Zimmerman was a person who, if I saw him, how would I know that he has any authority if he does not identify himself? So I think that we must be honest in terms of the issue, in terms of race and how it played out.
It just occurs to me that, and I hadn't thought of this before, gee, I wonder if Trayvon Martin could have used a stand your ground defense if it had gone the other way.
Growing up in Puerto Rico and the gay rights movement taking a really strong position right now and gaining a lot of ground, a lot of the opposition and the vitriol and unfortunately the hatred that is being spewed are being spewed by religious leaders.
When young people go to play basketball, they don't ask, is this a faith-based or not? They want to play basketball. If they want to go to after-school program and they need remedial services, they don't care if it's faith-based or not faith-based.
Bringing Fresh Direct there in their proposed plan, I don't care if they have 10 electric trucks or 100 electric trucks or their entire fleet turns electric, it still will cause traffic congestion when you put 2,000 additional vehicles on the streets.
The Kingsbridge Armory is over 600,000 square feet of space. It's huge, and there's no reason why that space can't be creatively redeveloped in order to meet the needs of the community where it actually rests.
After-school programs, leadership programs, mentoring kids, the apprenticeship programs between Lehman and Fordham, and getting these community involved and creating jobs for the community, creating the economic impact that is sustainable for the length of the life of the building. I mean, those are things there that because we're using the hockey as a vehicle, but to come into the Bronx there and be partners and create all this sustainability for the people in here and
and create dreams and give these kids dreams. That, to me, is what is interesting about this project.
It's my anniversary of my television show, so I bought myself a present. Okay,
well,
are you
great.
ready? I can't believe I bought myself one of these. I can't believe you wore this for a living. This is a freaking work of art. Are you kidding me? It took me a while to find one.
Great,
there it
look
is,
at that.
ladies and gentlemen.
That's the
and so now I'm
CCM,
really
yeah.
hoping that you're going to. This, you see, he recognized right away. This is a 1994 jersey.
That's it.
Would you autograph it
I
for
would
me?
definitely autograph it for
All
you.
right, before we go, that's what we're going to do. And that jersey is now framed and hanging in my living room with Mr. Messier's autograph. And in fact, I think we all expect he's going to become an honorary Bronxite very soon. Before we go to the next segment, there's one person that I want to thank, and she's not here. She's no longer with the show, but our former producer, Jane Filoro, did an amazing job in booking all the guests and being a producer for many years. So I want to publicly thank her for her great service and her great work. And I know a lot of people really appreciate what she did, and I certainly do as well. In our studio, it's my good friend, Dan Halbin, the Bronx Artist Deluxe, and nice to have you with us, Dan.
Well, glad to be with you again.
Yet again. For people who don't know, not this set, but the set that we use on the show, that was adapted from a painting that Danny Halbin did, and I guess that work is still in the Bronx Community College Library.
Permanent display, so I hope people can get up to that magnificent library at Bronx Community College, one of the great monuments in the Bronx.
You were on the show, do you know how many times?
8.
7. Well, now is the
Now,
8th. Here we go. He's right, 8 times. The first one was on August 20th, 1996. I probably asked you this question a number of times, but we'll rephrase it. Well, why the Bronx? Why is it so exciting for you to be a landscape painter in the Bronx?
Well, I would imagine that I may have come up with a similar answer at our first meeting. There's no explanation for such things except that the impressions that one has, the earliest experiences as a child, are the deepest and the ones that we carry with us. In my case, I haven't carried it that far. I'm still in the apartment.
Hey, look.
I'm in the
who
apartment.
Who are you talking to here?
So here we are, and we have this treasure of experiences, and what could be more fulfilling than to try to express them and give them back to those who can appreciate such things.
This wonderful facility at the Andrew Friedman Home is yet another addition to really the community of artists in the borough of the Bronx. Talk to me a little bit about what's going on now in Bronx art.
Well, I'm happy to say that in these 20 years that things have evolved, and we are at a moment of opportunity for artists. I mean, and you have always made that space for the arts in the community, and that's what I so appreciate, because you won't hear those words in many of these other conversations, unfortunately. But as Olga Tirado, our esteemed director of Tourism Council of the Bronx, always says, art equals economic development.
There you go.
We have to believe that we have to take advantage of the great cultural resource that we have in the Bronx. And at this moment, we just last month had the exhibition of the Bronx Artist Documentary Project,
which was in this building.
Which was in this building, and it was a documentation by 30 Bronx photographers of 80 Bronx artists creating work here in the Bronx.
Well, what was exciting about it was 2 different forms of artists getting together. It was
all exciting. And what we suffer from in the Bronx is we are the scale of a big city. We have the population of a big city, but we don't have the infrastructure of a big city.
And we have a talk show that's been on the air for 20 years, trying to do
and artists,
kind of job.
who are trying to on the same vision that you have to say, you know, how can we communicate? How can we increase the possibility of communication from these different arenas, from different decades of backgrounds that people have from different neighborhoods, from different
parts of the world. Well, and I must tell you, on this show, it's not only the art. We've covered music, we've covered photography. We did a show on underwater photography, and then we did a bunch of other shows, all kinds of different shows that are kind of off the beaten path, but really comprise the beautiful mosaic, if you will, of the borough of the Bronx. So here's our segment on arts, music, culture, and everything else. Let's take a look.
The thing that really flew and was the most sellable that I was a salsa band leader, and I think that scared a lot of people. Although Thomas Jefferson was a violinist, you know, and Ronald Reagan was an actor.
Was the variety of music in South Bronx neighborhoods part of the glue in the melting pot that helped people get along? Did it kind of contribute to the general culture in addition to just being music?
It certainly helped me, for example, you know, the different music that were being played. And then the recordings that my brother would bring to the house. Plus, my brother already, by the time I was 11 years old, he was already playing with one of the top orchestras in New York, Mr. Tito Puente.
You could see the breakdown in the record. You could hear the band tell the other member, the drummer gonna get some, the guitar gonna get some, or they're going to little solo drifts. So I used to watch this and watch particular people. I had to wait for this part of the record to come up. I said, oh, I wonder if I put all of these records back to back.
And put all those pieces back to back.
Up front, back to back, boom, boom. I call it the merry-go-round.
If you look at the history of hip-hop back in the 70s, early 70s, right when Kool Herc moved to the Bronx, conditions there were horrible. Buildings were being burnt down by the landlords. The landlords were collecting the insurance money. So it just had a ripple effect all throughout the South Bronx. If you remember, in 1973, there was a lot of rubble. There was a lot of abandoned buildings. People were moving out.
I really don't want to start quoting "It's like a jungle out there." It makes me
It was a jungle. It was hard.
Did it have an effect on people? When they heard white lines, did they do more or less cocaine?
Well, that's up for debate. I know at first I did more.
I think the key challenge is to make a documentary which pays tribute to him, and at the same time make an objective film, meaning covering both sides of him, you know, the good and the bad, of course, and at the same time making sure that the fans appreciate the film.
2-3 days on location. And then
2-3 days for like the ones we just saw.
Yeah, and then I have the gist of it. But then it has to become a painting unto itself. It has to have its own life. And what I am really drawn to about a painting is that it should pull you in. You should feel like you can, you know, go, you know, explore it and look around the corner.
Have a class that talks about ecology, that talks about the natural world, is quite dry. To have the living thing
and say this is out of the river that's down your block.
The worst student in the world cannot help but feel compelled at life.
This is like a junior robotics thing?
First Robotics also sponsor another competition for junior high school kids and elementary kids. It's First Lego League, and the objective is the same as ours, but they built the robot out of Legos.
Then there is something I think is fantastic because it's a great value. It's $20.
Okay.
And it is my little baby doll. Why don't you hold it?
Okay, I'll hold up. It'll be my pleasure if she's going to spit up or something. You know, I'm wearing a suit here.
She's warm.
Now, why is this baby and doll?
She's an unbelievably soft baby doll.
It is unbelievably
soft.
This is one that's actually been in an exhibit with a tiger, and you could see all these gouges, these scratches. These are just from
these scratches are from the tigers,
from a Siberian tiger. That's pretty amazing.
That's how hard, and it's reasonably heavy. I don't know exactly how, and you attach it to at least 230 pounds.
Right. Which has been broken.
I didn't warm up yet. Oh, this is
Bring
the
the feet back a
stupidest.
little bit more. There you go. Get the knee under. Push it over. All right.
This is actually a book.
A book?
A book. Those are pages. And you can see the binding at the top where the shadow is.
Wow.
And there's obviously light coming through. So.
And did you play with the developing or the imagery afterwards, or
no,
everything is as you capture it?
As you capture it. But then, you know, if you actually shooting it you're controlling the studio environment, so you don't really need to control it afterwards.
Like land photography, you need a flash to eliminate the darkness.
And it is dark down there.
Well, after 15 feet of water, red is the first thing to go. The color is gone. This is called a drum fish, a very skittish fish, very hard to get communication with, I'll say.
And so so when you say communication, do you communicate with it in any way, shape, or form?
Well, what I meant is the connection where he is communicating to you.
And why don't you tell us how Tat's crew got started?
Well, we got our start early on in the early 80s, you know, doing the subway graffiti. We came up, you know, during those times painting, and over the years...
Not legally.
Not legally, of course not. Yeah, we were sanctioned by the city to paint. No, you know, it was all done illegally as kids when we grew up in New York watching it on the subways, of course. And as we got older, it's just something that we continued to do. And then I would say in the mid-90s, we began painting outdoors in the streets of the Bronx, and, you know, that led into something else where people were now recognizing us.
It convinced a number of people that not just people in the hood would deal with a book that has character of color as a lead. So that was, for me, a breakout. We got emails from Copenhagen, and I don't know, a lot of brothers that hang in there in Copenhagen.
Andrew Friedman, the whole history of the place was built in the early 1900s and was home for people that lost their money in the Depression. This is called Guinevere, and it's actually done from live cast, which is all my work. And it's all made out of cotton and then hand-painted in oil. It's one of my older pieces.
Life size?
Life size.
As you would think. And who was the lucky person?
I'll tell you, that was my sister.
Science mostly, but as I started getting, I was in band, and they said I had to keep my grades up. I started excelling in science, and I started learning.
Could I put you on the spot and ask you to just play a couple of notes? Play something. Go ahead. Go.
How about
This is an instrument that we use in our culture, especially Afro-Cuban culture. It's a religious instrument, actually, called she kere, but it's been adapted to the secular world, and it's a combination of a drum and a shaker.
Well, there it is, just a small sampling of the range of culture that's in the borough of the Bronx. I do want to mention that Art and About, Danny Halbin, is on BronxNet television. Maybe I inspired him a little bit to get his own show, and he does a program about art here on BronxNet television. Right after we do the next segment, we're going to stay on the air with you, and I'm going to be going out and we're going to be talking to our friends and neighbors who came out tonight to help us celebrate not only Bronx Talk, but 20 years of us talking in the borough of the Bronx. People who watch the show now don't realize that in the beginning of Bronx Talk, we did shows outside the studio. We did a number of things. We set up a forum for cops and kids. We visited the Bronx Zoo, the Bronx Museum, and a whole host of other things. Now, I had this idea that we would recreate what it was like in the 50s and bring one of those doo-wop groups that sang in the Bronx in the 50s to the original street corner where they originally sang. So I called up a couple of people, the late Arthur Cryer, one of the great bass singers of all time, and he got his friends together, including Lillian Leach, and we did a show with them singing on a street corner, and they reminisced and talked about what it was like in the 50s, and maybe about 40 years later, they sat down in the street corner and did what I think is really one of my favorite moments that we ever had on Bronx Talk. So here they are on a street corner in Morrisania, the legendary Morrisania Review, right where they created the music. Let's take a look.
Yesterday's memories. How I wish you'd come back to me and say, darling, I was wrong. I was wrong, my dear. I would be happy as a lark singing in a tree. If you would only come back to me and say, let's start all over again. First you lied, then you cried.
You gave me a song and dance. Oh, my darling, how I love you.
You leave me standing in a trance. Oh, now you are gone, leaving me with yesterday's memories. How I wish I could say to you, my dear, take back your yesterday's memories. Oh, now you are gone, leaving me with yesterday's memories. I wish I could say to you, my dear, take back your yesterday's memories.
Yesterday's memories.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Here we go. Wow, look at all these people. So what do you think? It's been an incredible 20 years, right? Kind of unbelievable. I know there's some elected officials who wanted to, they were coming in, come on, can we talk to you? So who's here? Councilmember Cohen is here. I know I wanted to recognize Senator Gustavo Rivera had to go, and Assemblyman Mark Jonai was here, and he had to go. I see Congressman Engel is here, and Vanessa Gibson getting her second shot. Wait, hold on. First of all, Andrew Cohn, come here. We'll ask you the same questions we had everybody else. You were on the show a couple of times, right?
I think only once for the debate.
No, and then you didn't. You came on with Vanessa Gibson afterwards. After you were actually elected. Yes, you won the debate. You won the election, for goodness sakes. So there you see how fleeting time is. It was only 3 months ago.
I did do that show with Vanessa, yes. We had a good time. That went well.
All right, well, come on in. We'll try to have a good time again.
Anytime.
There you go. So what do you got?
I asked Vanessa to come up because we both actually, the Bronx delegation, including the speaker, Melissa Mark Viverito, all signed on to a proclamation in your honor and congratulating you for 20 years on the air. Yeah.
Wow. And so the question would be, how many of those members have been on the show? I don't know. A number of them.
I think most of them. Yeah.
Well, actually, it's probably not true because of term limits, which is another whole issue. We have people like you and you who are new to the city council. Anyway, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And thank you for supporting us.
Gary. Congratulations.
Thank you again.
Yes, thank you.
All right, here we go. I have officially run out of wall space. Maybe my mom will allow me to hang it up in her. By the way, has she been crying all night? Has Mom been crying all night? All right. Thank you so much. And where is Congressman Engel is here? Come on up, Congressman Engel. We shared a little memory a moment ago. He had a really bad back the night that he debated Larry Seabrook.
And I felt a lot better after the debate, though.
Oh, there you go. And then, of course, after you won the election. Boy, do I got about 100 questions to ask you that have nothing to do with Bronx Talk.
Well, before you ask me questions, let me congratulate you for 20 wonderful years. We've all been very proud of you. I've had the good fortune to have you as my constituent for a long time. And what could be better? This is just terrific, and it's one of the reasons why I'm so proud to represent the Bronx, live in the Bronx, and of course I was born in the Bronx. I grew up only about 8 blocks right from here, and the Bronx is the best, and there's a reason why we are the only borough on the mainland of the United States, because
we're the main ones.
That's right.
So this, I'm going to show you, this is an example of how it works. So when do you want to come on the show?
When you want me on.
Okay, we'll find a time. You're going to be in New York at some time soon?
Yeah, I'll be
All
here.
right, maybe before the end of the year.
Election day is a couple of weeks away.
Oh, do you have an opponent?
I should, but...
Because if you do, then you have to wait till after the election if you get reelected.
Put it this way, I've done such a wonderful job that I have no opponent.
Congressman, thank you for joining us, and thank you for helping celebrate Bronx Talk. Are there any other elected officials that we want to recognize? All right, now the microphone is open. Michael Johnson, come on up. Because Michael has news, and we're going to break news now. I'm going to stand here so we can use a... How are you, Michael?
Very well, Harry.
Michael Johnson, former Community Board 1, now with South Bronx Unite to Stop Fresh Direct. Now, there was a hearing tonight, so we're going to break news right on the show. What happened?
The State Department of Environmental Conservation, first of all, I want to say hello to everyone, and thank you, Gary, for doing 20 years and giving the community a real voice, because without you, I don't think our issue or a lot of issues would not have gotten any attention. But for you, you were that voice. So my Haven Port Morris area of the South Bronx has now gotten suggested priority status from the State Department of Environmental Conservation for an open space plan that has never existed before. So we now have something that we're looking to create 6 different access points within the Mount Haven Port Morris neighborhood, somewhere it never existed. And so given this community has high asthma rates, have all the poor air quality issues, something that it desperately needs.
Positive movement forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gary, for being here.
Great. All right, who else? Where's Bob and Mark? Oh, wait, one more proclamation. Sorry, come on up. This is Will Sanchez. Thank you.
Gary, Senator Serrano couldn't make it tonight. He sent his regrets. But I'm honored that he asked me to present this to you. This proclamation, you have been the watchdog of the Bronx for the last 20 years. And Senator Serrano wishes you another 20 years to do this as long as you love doing it.
He has been an enthusiastic participant, and you can thank him for me, too.
I have a question.
Uh-oh, questions.
How many times has he been on?
Off the top of my head, I don't know, and that gives you a reason to go look it up on the website, so there you go.
Well, he'll be happy to go on when you ask.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Well, now my mother's wall is officially out of space. Thank you so much. All right, there we go. So where's Bob and Mark? Where's Bob? Here's Bob from Riverdale. Where's Mark from Pelham Parkway? There we go. Come on, this for me is a dream come true. Or a nightmare come true, I don't know. This, ladies...
Would you like me to chop off your head?
No. This is, ladies and gentlemen, this is Mark from Pelham Parkway.
Yes, I'm Mark from Pelham Parkway.
And this is Bob from Riverdale.
No. It's Bob from Riverdale.
Oh, tonight is it Riverdale?
No, it's Bob from the Bronx News.
Tonight it's from the Bronx News. The reason that I brought them up together, these without a doubt have been the 2 most frequent phone callers into Bronx Talk. So I'm guessing he did it more because he started earlier than you did.
Yes, and I'm mostly in Montreal. I'm a lot in Montreal these days making films.
Excuse me.
I'm not here.
Excuse me.
So I don't have the time.
What is the best question you ever asked on our show when you called up?
I think it was when Amadou Diallo was shot, and I asked how could they not realize 40 bullets were their own shots hitting back at him.
Do you realize how many times I've tried to say, we get the idea, Mark, okay, enough, right?
Hey, yeah, but it's hard enough to form a sentence when you're trying to ask a question going through your mind.
Tell me all about it. And Bob, how do you determine whether you're going to be Bob from Riverdale or Bob from the Bronx News?
Depends on the topic on your show.
Oh, okay.
By the way, Gary, you're forgetting that I was on your show.
I did not forget.
When I ran against Assemblyman Jeffrey Dinowitz.
He was very mad at me for making him come to that debate.
Yes, but I was the one, and I'm the reason why you see 10 people on the debates now.
That's not quite true, but it's fine, Bob. We love having you on the show. What's the best phone call you ever made in all the years of Bronx Talk?
I think you showed it, the one to former Borough President Ferrer.
Right. You asked Fred, that was right.
Run for public advocate rather than mayor.
That's right, and he said, no, I want to be the mayor. Anyway,
right.
You were right, as usual. Ladies and gentlemen, Bob from wherever, and Mark from Pelham Park.
Just want to congratulate you on 20 years. I think BronxNet should take the next leap and maybe go take the Bronx somewhere like Satellite, like Sirius, and maybe we could just hike the Bronx a little bit different than what the image is, because when I'm working in Montreal, people only still know the Bronx is burning. Howard Cosell is still very much in
And so you take highlights of Bronx Talk and you show them, and it changes their perception.
No, they get the papers up there, and when they read about something bad, it's...
All right. You see what I have on the show? Here they go. One more question.
Didn't you do a morning show?
We did do a morning show. 5 years, and every day for 5 years, 5 days a week.
Didn't you do actually more than 1,000 shows?
Well, but that was not the current program. You continue to amaze me. Thank
Monday
you.
night, I'll call it.
I was going to ask if Buddy Stein wanted to come up here. Ladies and gentlemen, Bernard Stein, Pulitzer Prize-winning writer, and now, I guess, with Hunter College. So nice to have you, buddy.
It's wonderful to be here. This is my 9th time.
He counted. Shh, everybody be quiet back there.
You know, I want to congratulate you because you and I and Cappy and people like
Please ask people in the back to keep it
David Cruz, Jordan Moss, were part of a small fraternity of Bronx journalists. And I think that we tell stories so different from the stories that the
rest of the world knows.
The New York City media at large tells, and they're better stories.
I'm going to tell a story about Buddy Stein that he's not aware of that I just told some of our guests. And that is when we started the program, I mean, you can count how old I was, but I was not very experienced in journalism in the Bronx. And Buddy Stein, without question, was one of the journalists that I looked up to. And when I would call and ask you, gee whiz, you know, what is really the story behind an issue? And I'd learn about it. Now times have changed, and I'm finding people are calling me. And there you go. So I've inherited a little bit of what Buddy Stein started.
You're the eminence grise now.
I guess so. Buddy Stein, thank you for your support and for the great work in the Bronx. Okay. All right. Who else? Anybody else wants to talk? Ed, come on up. Ed doesn't like to be on camera. Ed Conde Garcia is probably the best blogger in the Bronx. So nice to have you, Ed. Sorry, I'm going to hug Ed. I love Ed. He's my buddy.
Love Gary, too.
So, what's going on? What's new? I mean, you wrote about me this week. What else we got? What do we got?
Well, like Michael Johnson just mentioned, you know, we were at the hearing today for the South Bronx Waterfront Plan. Just a lot of wonderful things happening in our borough. Probably the biggest, most important thing that's happening right now is the closing of Barnes & Noble at Bay Plaza, which will leave the Bronx without a bookstore. And we will be the only borough in New York City without a bookstore. So something has to be done about that.
Well, do we want to talk issues? Because I just had a lengthy conversation about that. Apparently, we're going to get right into it. This is what we do on Bronx Talk. Apparently, the developer offered them the space in the new mall they built, and then when Barnes & Noble bought, they said, well, then we're going to double your rent on that property. They see that property is worth more. Barnes & Noble decided that, well, you know what, we'd rather not be in a mall. We want to be in this big location. Hence, the Bronx gets again. Anyway, Ed, the reason I brought Ed up, Ed is an example of the changing nature of media, because Buddy Stein talked about all the little newspapers we used to have. Now we have excellent bloggers, and none is better and more dedicated than Ed Conde Garcia.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Jeffrey, my brother.
Gary, you taught me a statistic about the Bronx that I didn't know, and I can't quite...
He doesn't live in the Bronx anymore, folks. It's okay.
I regret that. But I hope you'll remind me, if the Bronx was a city, it would be the
8th largest city in the nation.
The 8th largest city in the nation. And I think it's just so important that the Bronx has a talk show, just like all the other 7 larger cities have, and probably the next 20 cities have.
And they also have daily media. They have daily newspapers. We don't have any of that.
So kudos to you and to BronxNet for doing it right.
Jeffrey, thank you so much. Mom is here, Suzanne is here, Rachel is here, Lori is here, cousin Steve and Stewie are here. My whole family, and Linda's back there. My whole family. Are we ready? Hold on. I'm going to break the thing here. All right, hold on. You're going to hold the microphone? All right. So what do we say? Oh, I didn't bring it with me. So on next week, November 3rd, is the Green Party is coming on. November 10th, the Comptroller of the City of New York is coming on. And November 17th, a fantastic show about youth mentoring, the kind of new program that we need in the Bronx to take care of our kids. That's the nature of Bronx Talk, all right? Here's to next week's show. Where's Michael? Anyway, that's it. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week. And it's too late to stop now. Good night.